Microphone check 1 2, testing 1 2 3. What's going on, world? Can you hear me okay? Alrighty, thank you, Mark. Mark's going for moderator of the month. That. Karen, welcome in. Timmy, appreciate that. Kelly, welcome in. Ralph. What's up, Rescue? Hey, I appreciate that. That's what we need. All right. So looks like the sound check went well. We'll go ahead and put that on a pause. How's the video going? I feel like there's a little bit of a delay on my end. All right, guys, we're going to be diving back into Abby and Libby's case. This is kind of a follow-up on yesterday's Delphi live stream. What you can expect today, we're going to talk a lot about the KIK app, which was very much involved with the Keegan Klein case. Of and stalking and grooming through the KIK app. So I wanted to bring some attention to the dangers out there with that app, especially for you parents. A couple articles refer to it as the devil's playground. So you could basically send images and videos anonymously. Very easy to set up a profile if you have a burner phone. So it attracts predators. And it's very much involved, at least with Keegan Klein, and we will speculate whether or not it was involved with Richard Allen. But the first thing I want to do is, are we even dealing with a group type murder when it comes to the Delphi case? So first thing we're going to look at is opportunistic versus a group murder. We'll look at Keegan Klein and how he's connected with the KIK app. We'll look at a list of KIK CSAM cases. And just out of curiosity, we'll focus in on CSAM cases specifically in Las Vegas. We know Keegan Klein and the Kleins and their trip to Vegas may play a part in all of this as far as the motive. We'll look at what it would take to kind of set up a burner phone along with KIK and other apps like Meet Me and Skype. Things also mentioned in the affidavit of Keegan Klein's sextortion cases. Throughout this, as we go through this information, it might kind of spiral off into other few cases like the Nicole Lavell case and Elliot von Schaffner, the guy that was busted in Kokomo. I think it was February 10th. So they were doing a huge operation that involved the KIK app, not far from Delphi. It might be the very reason that there was FBI agents in the area and on scene during the search for Abby and Libby when they were just listed as missing. and then we'll touch on whatever you guys want to talk about. Welcome in, Karen. Julia, what's up? Miss Dog Lover, good to see you. All right, we're looking good here. I think Richard Allen acted alone in the actual murder. I think there's a Klein connection at least. I hear that a lot, and I always want to argue against it, but the deeper my investigation takes me, the more I'm agreeing with you, Julia, because I'm seeing more and more, specifically on the KIK app, of predators sharing information. We're going to look at a case where a guy actually was spending a shit ton of money purchasing this type of information. And this guy, not only was he spending a lot of money, he was also sharing fantasies of murdering children. And that's one of the cases we're going to touch on from Nevada. So that's what I'm noticing is a pattern that these people who are targeting children for sexual reasons, they don't seem to just stop there. It's not really about, although there is a sexual component, it seems to be more about power and control, and maybe even a little bit of sexual sadism. And I see that from the evidence in the Delphi case. There's this feel of an online catfish, but the evidence that was left at the crime scene kind of leans us to believe that maybe there was an ulterior motive. No just direct rape or sexual assault. An hour and 45 minutes with the victims doing what? So everything else kind of points at an opportunistic killer, and Richard Allen kind of fits that according to the evidence. Definitely not according to intuition, right? But he fits all of that. And I definitely want to break that down first. But yeah, these guys are trading, they're selling, they're joining groups. So they join a group on KIK, and it's a whole bunch of predators from all across the world convening on this one application, KIK or Meet Me, or so they're kind of sitting together, they're putting their brains together, they're talking, they're basically being each other's therapists, even from what I read earlier. They talk to each other about their urges. It's like a serial killer summer camp or some sick shit. They trade CSAM. They show themselves abusing their own family members. One case I ran across, his name on KIK was Bad Dad. And he was showing videos of his own children. Keegan Klein, he had some things like that, remember, that he denied. So we have the Keegan Klein, the master manipulator, who we get to see in a police interview, right? He's got this mask up. He's obviously a psychopath, in my opinion. And he's just manipulating everybody. He's telling half-truths, and he's kind of projecting what he wants you to see. This pathetic guy, not much going on. They always want to bring up their medical issues, right? They always have something to blame it on. But that's what I get from Keegan Klein. In reality, he's a very violent, angry person. And we saw that in the probable cause affidavit that was actually sealed. Now, we were able to get our hands on a page or two, and we get to see who Keegan Klein really was. He was this manipulator, very sexually violent, talked about gangbanging. During his interview, he said, "Oh, I would never meet these people. Even my girlfriend that I'm with now, I wouldn't even meet her before. It took me a while to meet her." And then we get a look at the truth during his trial of who he really was. He was always trying to meet them. He was manipulating them to get their address, telling them that he's going to send items to their home, which he never did. He just wanted to acquire their address. So what was he doing with this information? Was he selling it? Was Keegan Klein part of a group on, let's say, KIK? And he's sitting there with somebody like potentially a Richard Allen, who's got a burner phone. He's got a fake name. He's got a throwaway email address, and he never connects to his own Wi-Fi. It's all public Wi-Fi. And there he is sitting in a group with Keegan Klein and others from around the world who are talking about their fetishes. They're talking about their urges towards children. They're sharing CSAM. They're sending videos of abusing their own children, their own family. A lot of people said, well, there's no evidence to tie Richard Allen. Literally, all you would need is a burner phone with no connection to you. Having to fly to Las Vegas, photos of a crime. If you have a video and photos and you documented the crime, you don't want to leave a digital footprint. So if you have physical copies or something that's whole, maybe can travel with that. Thing were may have been uploaded to the dark web. And I think that's what was going on with the leaked photos. Remember, we had involved. Um, so what I'm thinking is there may have been a group of people accessing the dark web. And on the dark web, they got their hands on the photographs that were actually taken by the killers. So we have a leak of the actual photographs that were taken by the killer. And then we have the so I think once the leak, everybody found out about the leak and certain names were released to the public, some people thought that they were afraid some other things were going to be. Audio is choppy. Okay, let me try to do something here. Karen, please stand by. Let me know, guys, how my audio is doing. I read it. It's good. Stop. Okay. All right, let's go to a notorious, well-known these murders are. I would have thought someone would find evidence on the dark web. I would have known how to begin, but a percentage of people must. Well, the people that were involved in the leak are definitely people who well. Okay, hopefully our audio is back. Audio is out. I don't know what that means. You hear me? Do you hear me good though? Because if not, I can reset the live stream. But if you hear me, I'm ready to get going. I mean, we haven't even started anyway. So, yes, what, Timmy? Yes. Okay, now you hear me. All right, we're good to go. Okay, so I think it's important we start first with identifying whether or not we're even dealing with the group murder, right? If this is pre planned, we're dealing with the group as opposed to an opportunistic killer that basically the prosecution painted Richard Allen as. And most people believe that to be the case, mainly because that's what all the evidence tells us. But there is a lot of what ifs and a lot that we don't know. Okay. An individual who let's start with opportunistic. An individual who kills when an opportunity arises, typically without extensive planning or a specific target in mind. So does that fit with Richard Allen? We still don't know why he went to the trails. We don't know why he was in Peru. We don't know why he blew off his family. And we don't know why he changed his story. Okay, so we would be looking at a solo actor, somebody who operates alone, right? Didn't wake up thinking about committing a murder. It was a spontaneous impulse. So acts on impulse when circumstances align, like encountering a vulnerable victim in an isolated area. Julie says he knew they'd be there. I can't think of any other way. Well, we now know that he went there all the time. You know? So that brings up statistically, he has more of a chance of being there that day, right? Than some random killer or a group of murders. Like he's always there. He has photographs of being there. He admitted to being there. So he goes to those trails often. So why should we be surprised that he's there on the day of the murders? And it does fit with that, encountering a vulnerable victim in an isolated area. And that's what Abby and Libby were, right? Vulnerable victims in an isolated area. And then when they crossed the bridge, they put themselves in more danger, according to John Douglas. What's up, Frank? Mark, I've wondered if Richard Allen did dry runs before he abducted Abby and Libby. Well, a lot of these types of killers, they fantasize about things. So if he's constantly, remember he said the They would go to the trails, walk to the bridge, cross the bridge, come back, and then go. He didn't want to call it a ritual, but that's what it was to him. It was a ritual. So why he's doing this, which he made it seem like he did it constantly. He's probably fantasizing about it. Like, dang. Like if I really wanted to, like I could kidnap somebody right here, I can bring them right down the hill, and I could commit a sexual assault right here. So sadistic psychopathic killers are constantly fantasizing about murder and rape and sadism, and that's how they become the opportunistic killer, right? They're constantly fantasizing about it. All they need is the right circumstances, and then they react. And it may not even be to kill. Sometimes killing is just the byproduct of that choice. Like, oh, I made this horrible decision, this impulsive decision, but I'm not going to prison over it. So that means I have to kill you, because if I don't kill you, you're going to tell law enforcement what I did. They'll have my DNA, they'll have a description of my face. And although I know that I made this horrible decision, I don't care enough about you as human beings to not kill you. Self-preservation is more important to me than your lives. Even though I know that I've made a bad decision, I always knew that I would make this decision one day. If if this isn't the second, third, fourth, or fifth time. It will happen again. Or if it is the first time, it'll definitely happen a second. What's up, Mustang? Boston Christian. All right. Victims are usually chosen based on convenience or vulnerability, not personal connection. So does that fit with Richard Allen and what we know about February 13th, 2017? Richard Allen, he's at a place that he always goes to. It's his sanctuary almost. That and what is it? Riley Park, sorry. Reed Park is out here in Gilbert, Arizona. So yeah, Riley Park and the Monon High Bridge, two of his favorite places. He's always at the Monon High Bridge Trail. So he's just there again that day. So it's just convenient that he runs into two vulnerable girls and they have no personal connection. Does that fit? And this kind of plays into the part a lot that we don't know, because we talked about Abby and to her friend of Richard Allen. When it comes to an opportunistic killer, minimal to none when it comes to planning. The crime exploits a chance encounter or situation. So he may have been stressed. He may have been having a shit week, a shit day, going to one of his favorite places to unwind. And there they are. The vulnerable victims in an isolated place, and he needs to regain his power. He's always fantasized about it. It was a perfect recipe for a psychopath. So a psychopathic killer. So we're looking at impulsivity, lack of empathy, situational triggers. And that, rather than a consistent pattern or premeditated violence. Howard, what's up? If he didn't know their ages from a distance, I think the girls might have looked like adults. I think when Richard Allen mentioned that, that's him trying to remove the pedophile aspect of it all. He'll tell a half truth. I didn't know they were kids. Like I'm not a complete monster. I might be a monster and I did this, but I'm not a complete monster. Kind of like Keegan Klein. Oh yeah, I did all this, but the stuff where you have with the 3-year-old and the kids and all that. Nope, I didn't do any of that. Signs of a psychopath. Refuse to paint themselves in any kind of negative light, if possible. What's up, Bismo? Boston says, blessed heavenly birthday, Abby, precious angel. Well, that technically was yesterday. The way Richard Allen quickly went to the bridge makes me believe he knew the girls were there. Well, what was he doing in Peru that morning? Remember, Peru is where the home of Anthony Schatz is. Well, the creator of Anthony Schatz, Keegan Klein, lived in Peru. And we've always been looking for somebody who was sharing the Anthony Schatz account. While Richard Allen's in Peru, the hometown of the guy who created it. Come to find out, he worked a block away from his home at the CVS. The CVS. Is that you, Ricky? From back in the day? Crazy little Ricky? Oh, is that you, Mr. Klein? Yeah, we should hang out sometime. Yep, definitely trying to minimize the. So he said his. Like, how was hip surgery? How's it going? And why couldn't he go to lunch with his family? What's more important than that? You ain't got shit going on. Good to see you, Bismo. Do you think Abby and Livy was basically a circumstance of wrong place, wrong time, or he was after the kids? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand. I don't understand why about it. We know that the investigative team were extremely interested in the Kleins. All the way up till even after the arrest of Richard Allen. Remember, we got to seal the probable cause. We got to seal this. We got to seal everything. We don't want to alert these other people that we believe are involved. We don't want them destroying evidence. And then soon as Richard Allen had his defense team and they went public with their strategy, they dropped that like a bag of potatoes. They just dropped it. Because as hard as they tried to connect Richard Allen and the Kleins together, because their intuition is in line with ours, but they are restricted. They can only deal with what can be presented during a trial. But they spent millions of dollars, all this effort into the Anthony Schatz right from the very beginning. They were serving search warrants about Anthony Schatz, trying to connect them. The only time they went away from that is when Richard Allen's defense team got their claws in the case. Okay, now let's take a look at a group of killers. So by definition, 2 or more individuals who collaborate to commit murder, often with shared motives or goals. Involves multiple perpetrators working together, which can include division of roles, lookout, planner, executor. Mustang, I think the bridge was a trap. Anyone that crossed would be his victim. If he was after children knowing he could outpower them, it may have not matter who was there. He could handle one or two, but not a group. I don't know. I feel like if we're dealing with a psychopathic killer, I feel like 2 victims might seem overwhelming. I feel like it wouldn't seem ideal. Typically, they want zero resistance, a very vulnerable target. You know, somebody that's sleeping, a young child, a defenseless animal. But then again, we don't know how Richard Allen perceived them that day. What he says and what the truth is could be 2 different things. Julia says Delphi is a pretty small town. Everything is a fairly concentrated area, so it doesn't surprise me that Richard Allen was around there. The girls would frequent. Yeah, it was a place that they frequented and he frequented. So that's like 2 times the probability of a chance encounter. But also that could play into an inappropriate relationship. Maybe they've ran into each other prior to that, and one was being groomed. All right. So as far as the planning, that varies from spontaneous to highly organized, right? Anthony shots, the luring, maybe the whole Keegan Klein targeting these other girls and trying to get their address. Maybe they're looking to fill the role of a target. So they got the plan, right? We have a customer. He's offering us 40K. We need to provide a snuff film. We need video, photographs, and we need to bring them and physically hand them to him in Las Vegas. So how do we do that? We have 6 months to complete this task. So throughout that 6 months, they start by creating the Anthony Shots account, targeting a whole bunch of different girls, getting their addresses, maybe even stalking them, trying to pick the right one. It would be more risky, though, going to their home, because we did have the ski mask incident where somebody actually showed up to the home. So I don't know if that's related to Richard Allen or if maybe Keegan Klein sold the girl's information somewhere on some sick website and multiple killers kind of answered the call and showed up, because we've covered a few cases where there's people that sell information on the dark web. So they'll stalk your children. They'll follow you to church. They'll follow you to the gas station. They'll follow you for weeks. They'll hack into your computers, your cameras. They'll get all of the information on a child of yours, usually a young girl, and her entire schedule, her entire routine, her first, middle, last name, her social security number, every angle as far as a photograph, and they will sell this dossier to somebody on the dark web. Now, killers who fantasize about murder, they choose the dark web for anonymity, right? You don't want to kill somebody like the movie Mr. Brooks. Remember, he says you don't want to kill anybody that you know or have a relation to, because investigators will find that connection. That's their job. But if you're killing somebody that's completely random and unconnected to you, that they're going to seek that out. So that could be something that Keegan Klein was offering up. Like, hey, I'm going to sell addresses. I'm going to exploit these girls, and then I'm going to sell all their information to psycho killers. People out there are like, oh, that's so far-fetched, Sleuth. You just got to go watch some of the old live streams. I mean, how many cases do we have to cover to try to explain that this stuff is real? This is really happening. All right. So, what about the motivation for group killings? They can be diverse, ideological, cults like the Manson family, financial, organized crime, revenge, or social bonding, peer pressure, gangs. How would a group target their victims? Victims may be chosen for specific reasons: symbolic, personal, strategic, randomly, depending on the group's objectives. Julia says, could see a scenario where Richard Allen was stalking them previously. Maybe offered to buy them weed or booze and said to meet at the trails. Then he changed the game. Total speculation. Yep, definitely. Okay, what about the dynamics of a group plotting to kill? Group psychology plays a role. Individuals may act under peer influence, shared ideology, or charismatic leaders' directions. Conformity or fear of dissent can drive participation. I mean, the crime scene definitely tells us that there could have been two killers. Each girl was treated differently. Richard Allen only apologized for killing Abby. He didn't say, I apologize for killing Libby and Abby. Libby was in the nude. You know, somebody wanted to embarrass her, shame her, take out their frustration on her. The case that we're covering later, the zombie hunter. So he was his name was Brian Patrick Miller. His father died when he was a young kid, and his mother wasn't really prepared to take over and was really hard on him. She beat him, psychologically abused him, and would constantly threaten him with large kitchen knives, like chef's knives. So when he got older, he became a serial killer, and that's what he did. He attacked women with kitchen knives, with chef's knives. So I mean, you never know. And he killed in his own backyard, which is very similar to Richard Allen. All right. So what do you guys think about that so far? You think it's possible that we are dealing with the group? Or are we stuck on opportunistic? Because if you're all convinced that it was opportunistic, we can stop right here. There's no need to go on any further and talk about it. I think the only reason Richard Allen might not be snitching on other actors, if that's the case, could be he's being threatened by them. They might harm his family, or strategic for his appeal. Yeah, and if he snitches on others, that's him admitting his own guilt, right? He can't have intimate knowledge about a case unless he was there. So snitching on this person over here is also snitching on himself. He doesn't want to do that. And then we have people that were completely ignored, like David McCain. Nobody even, like, you want to talk about hiding in plain sight, right? That's what Barry Morphew did. He hid right in plain sight. He basically joined the investigative team. Remember, he's handing law enforcement officers evidence bags, Ziploc bags from one of his kitchen drawers. Like, oh, here you go. I'm helping. So I don't understand why David McCain wasn't investigated more. They interrogated Kelsey German 3 times and didn't really interrogate David McCain 1 time. Did they take his phone? Why didn't they search warrant on him? He matches everything Rich Allen has up until the bullet. So why was there no search warrant served there? So if Richard Allen and the McCains are a different group that committed the murders, right? Everything's hypothetical because right now we don't know. Right now the story is Richard Allen is an opportunistic killer. He didn't plan this out. There's no connection to the Kleins. There's no connection to the McCains. But why wasn't David McCain looked at more? So if Richard Allen's working with David McCain, that would explain why he's remaining silent. Because the McCains are very powerful. And if they were able to convince you to commit a murder and try to set up, let's say, Ron Logan in a hypothetical theory so that you can take power over that land, which they're extremely invested in. They're creating these groups, right? These nonprofits. And then they're able to receive a shit ton of donations and grants and things like that. So they could easily be skimming off the top of that. We're talking millions of dollars, 1.5 just for the Monon High Bridge Trail alone. So if you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Get rid of Ron Logan so that you can acquire that land, that part of the trail, which is a very pivotal role to the history of his own family, using Richard Allen as the patsy or the gunman, the knife man, pay him a significant amount of money for his role, and then ensure Richard Allen, like, hey, I have power here. If anybody brings your name forward, I'll make it disappear, right? So the McCain angle could explain the lost tip, putting their thumb on the scale. Like, don't worry, if anything comes up about us, I'll make it disappear. I have power around here. I have influence. So a scenario like that could definitely keep Richard Allen from talking. That's somebody who could really threaten his family and get to his family and would also be protected by law enforcement. All right, let's take a look at the KIK app. So Klein pleaded guilty in 2023 to 25 counts related to child sexual abuse material and child exploitation, receiving a 43-year sentence with 3 years suspended to probation. His activities on KIK involved using the Anthony Schatz account to contact one of Delphi victims, Liberty German, though no direct evidence conclusively ties him to the murders. The case highlighted KIK's role as a platform that, due to its anonymity, user registration with usernames not phone numbers or verified emails, can be exploited for predatory behavior. KIK's lack of end-to-end encryption and minimal moderation has drawn criticism, as it allows users to connect with strangers easily, posing risks, especially to minors. Here, let's watch a quick video. So this part's pretty scary. It didn't take them very long. They kind of created a catfish account just to see who would try to message them. So pay very close attention, especially you parents with teenage kids. Let's go to Julia Burns. Makes a good point. McCain's are just as likely suspects as Ron Logan. That's what I'm saying. And they served 2 search warrants on Ron Logan and dragged his name through the mud. But Dave McCain was referred to as the flannel shirt guy. Nobody even knew really that he even existed until the trial. They didn't even know that he was factually there. Come to find out, he was at the trails from 2 to 4. 2 to 4. Brad Heath reported a secondary vehicle, somebody that appeared to be looking over the area. No search warrant, no discussion about Dave McCain's involvement, nothing. Even though that would make total sense why the girls were found on Ron Logan's property. These David McCain referred to the trails as the dream. His whole operation out there. He's referring to it as his dream. So this case in Virginia is a case we're going to talk a little bit about. It's the Nicole Lavell case. It's very terrifying. We'll transition to that right now. Let's go to Steve's comment. One hurdle I have about the team idea is how Richard Allen was left to walk back to his car, bloody and exposed. That is a big risk for a team if he was caught. Well, what's riskier? And we don't know what happened. They could have been arguing. They could have been fighting. We don't know exactly why his bullet ended up at the crime scene. We just assume that he re-racked it for the purposes of intimidation, but we don't know. We don't know if he actually got into a fight with his other cohorts or what. We don't know if him being covered in mud and blood, they said, hey, you can't get in my car. Sorry. You know, you're covered in mud and blood. Let's take a look at this case real quick. This is out of Virginia. Nicole Lavell. So we'll just do a brief overview because it kind of relates to what we're talking about here. Nicole Lavell, a 13-year-old from Blacksburg, Virginia, was murdered on January 27th, 2016. So same age as Abby and Libby, and right around the same time, you know, about a year and a couple months before. After sneaking out of her home to meet David Eisenhower, an 18-year-old Virginia Tech freshman who had been communicating with online, primarily through the KIK Messenger app. So what we've learned through Keegan Klein is these predators, they meet their victims on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of the most popular applications, and then they send them after grooming them to a secondary, just like killers will do in real life, right? They want to get you to a secondary location so that they can have privacy and do this horrible deed without anybody knowing. So they do the same thing online. Like, hey, I need you to come to this secondary application, like Skype or KIK. What's up, Fishy? Welcome in, welcome in. Yeah, he never got it back. So where is that? They didn't show it in court. And he could have had multiple SIM cards, right? Shit, maybe that's the SIM card that was being sold in Vegas. I don't know. Maybe they're all in on it together. Sleuth, you believe there was more people in the actual crime scene? I do, Mark. The reason I believe there were multiple people at that crime scene, there was a lot of violence perpetrated onto Libby. And there's no defensive wounds. And there's no signs that the girls were tied up. That doesn't make any sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is that somebody was holding Libby's arms behind her back. Right? One person said, hold her. Held her, and another person went completely crazy. All of his sadistic tendencies, he says, I'm going to let him out. You know, this is my opportunity. I'm not going to let it pass. I've always wanted to do this. I always wanted to kill somebody in a violent way. I have a feeling that Richard Allen was the man holding the arms. He's sorry for what he did to Abby because the other killers told him, you have to. If you don't, we're going to kill you. and then we're going to go kill your family. Because if you don't kill the other victim, which would have been Abby at the time, you're not as guilty as we are. We all need to have an equal hand in this crime. That way, nobody wants to snitch on the other person. So if you commit murder over here, you are just as guilty as I am. And that could explain why Richard Allen said, I'm sorry for what I did to Abby. Because maybe he didn't do anything to Libby. Somebody else did. All right, let's get back to this information. Eisenhower lured her out under the pretense of a secret date. Her body was found 3 days later in Surry County, North Carolina, having been stabbed 14 times, with a fatal wound to her neck. The motive was linked to Eisenhower's fear that Lavell might expose their inappropriate relationship, with prosecutors noting that he was concerned that she might be pregnant, though an autopsy confirmed she was not. So what if that's the motivation? The girls kind of found out who was catfishing them and who was doing all of this, and they planned to say something. Like, we're going to tell the cops, we're going to tell your wife, we're going to tell everybody. Like, I can't wait to expose you. Maybe that's what happened the night before. Eisenhower was charged with first-degree murder, abduction, and concealing a body. On February 9th, 2018, he pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 50 years in prison on June 26, 2018. Natalie Keepers, a 19-year-old Virginia Tech student and Eisenhower's accomplice, was charged with accessory to murder before and after the fact and concealing a body. Evidence showed they planned the murder at a cookout restaurant, discussing ways to kill Lavell and dispose of her body, including purchasing a shovel and using Clorox wipes to clean the crime scene. Keepers was found guilty on September 20th, 2018, and sentenced to 40 years in prison. So there was no DNA found at the crime scene in Delphi. I mean, this could be how Abby and Libby's murder was planned out. A group of people sitting down, discussing how they're going to perpetrate this sick crime. Right? Why Abby and Libby? Why Delphi? Because somebody selected that location and those victims. That's why. Welcome in, Dark Side. Investigators found Lavell's blood in Eisenhower's car and on items in Keeper's dorm, including a Minion's blanket belonging to Nicole. GPS data and surveillance footage corroborated their movements. The case highlighted dangers of social media, as Lavell's use of KIK allowed her to connect anonymously with Eisenhower, unbeknownst to her parents. Her mother, Tammy Weeks, expressed regret for not monitoring her online activity more closely, and criticized KIK's safety measures. And it's really tough too, because let's say you let your kid on Roblox or Facebook and you monitor it. But when you're monitoring it, you see that she's friends with, let's say, 5 people. You recognize 4 of them, but the 5th looks exactly like the rest. So it looks like she's friends with a bunch of 13-year-old girls. But one of the 13-year-old girls is Emily Ann 45, who was actually Keegan Klein, who could potentially be connected to the Delphi murderer, Richard Allen. And what they'll do is they'll groom your children. They'll tell them, hey, your parents are going to come looking for, they'll come looking for me. I need you to help hide me on your phone. This is what you do. And they'll give them step-by-step instructions. on what they need to do, maybe even where to pick up a burner phone. Like, hey, I hit a burner phone on the side of your house last night. Go pick it up. Whenever you talk to me on this burner phone. Don't let anybody know about it. Don't let your friends know about it. Don't tell your best friend. Don't tell anybody. Because if you do, I could get in trouble. Is that what you want to happen? It's all manipulation of a small child who knows nothing of the dangers of the world. And that's why they targeted them, so that they could take advantage of them, manipulate them, use them, and then throw them away like trash. Okay, so I was going through some cases that involved KIK and CSAM. I'll share a couple of those with you. And then it also reminded me of an old case that we used to cover early on. We'll spend some time on that case. We'll focus in on that one. So let's see. Here's a 2016 case out of New York. William Staunas. He pleaded guilty in 2016 to taking sexually explicit photos of himself with a 2-year-old in his custody. He used KIK to distribute these images and approximately 25 other users. So here, let me read this again. He used KIK to distribute these images to approximately 25 other users and discussed further abuse of the child. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. So you have a guy, William Steinhaus, taking explicit photos of himself with a 2-year-old in his custody. Then he's going on KIK and sharing this information with an entire group of people. Steinhaus used KIK username Bad Dad to share CSAM. His profile remained active even after his conviction, highlighting KIK's lack of proactive account removal. And I found that on Forbes. Okay, let's look at Elliot von Schaffner. Some of you guys might remember we did a couple of live streams on him. This was way before we knew about Anthony Schatz, way before we knew about Richard Allen. We looked into him again after Anthony Schatz and then again after the arrest of Keegan Klein because he fits that same profile. He might even be somebody who spoke directly with Emily Ann. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, I found his folder here. So remember, this guy was arrested February 10th, just 3 days prior to Abby and Libby's murders. So Elliot von Schaffner was arrested February 2017 following an FBI investigation into child pornography. Below are the details of his case. Schaffner came to the attention of law enforcement through an undercover FBI operation, targeting online forums frequented by individuals interested in child pornography and incest, using the KIK Messenger username Elliot_90765. He responded to posts by undercover officer expressing interest in sexual activity with children. On February 4th, 2017, Schaffner initiated contact with the undercover officer when asked if he was a dad with YNG, father with young children. He stated he was not, but claimed to be sexually active with the 5-year-old female child. He referenced a 2015 incident reported to the Kokomo Police Department involving a 4-year-old girl, though no charges were filed in that case. He also sent multiple images and videos depicting minors, including an infant, in sexually explicit acts. On February 10th, 2017, the FBI executed a search warrant at Schaffner's residence in the 1800 block of West Judson Road in Kokomo. He was alone at the time and arrested on an existing Howard County warrant for a felony petition to revoke a suspended sentence related to a prior Greentown robbery. During the search, agents seized a cell phone, USB drive, and HP laptop, all containing CSAM. Schaffner admitted to sending the explicit material to an undercover officer after being shown evidence of the communications. It's good to see you, Dark Side. Okay, Schaffner faced federal charges for possession and distribution of child pornography. A level 1 felony count of child molesting was not prosecuted as part of a plea deal. Schaffner pleaded guilty to distributing visual depictions of minors engaged in sexually explicit conduct. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay $3,000 in restitution to each identifiable minor victim for counseling, support, or treatment. Additionally, he is required to register as a sex offender for life, avoid non-incidental contact with minors, undergo treatment, take polygraph exams, and have his internet access monitored. So remember, we had FBI agents that were part of the search for Abby and Libby. And the information that we were trying to figure out back then, years ago, we always thought that that's why the FBI was there in Delphi, because they were running this huge operation on child predators using the KIK app. Just like Keegan Klein and his Emily Ann. All right, let's look at a few cases. Well, because of time, we'll look at one case in Las Vegas. We'll go over a few other things, and then we'll open it up for discussion. All right, this guy's name was Daniel Frederick Lish. He was sentenced August 2018. Daniel Frederick Lish was sentenced to 12 years in prison, followed by a lifetime of supervised release for distributing CSAM. In May 2018, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received 2 reports from Skype. Remember, Skype was also involved in the Keegan Klein case. Somebody that they believed was not Keegan Klein was using the Anthony Shots account and sending them to Skype to where he would remain in the dark and have direct access to his victims on video camera. So they received 2 reports from Skype about CSAM uploads. A search warrant for Lish's Skype account revealed conversations with another user discussing raping and killing children, during which Lish admitted to sexually assaulting young children. Lish and the user agreed to trade CSAM, and 26 CSAM images were found on an SD card during a search of his residence. Lish explicitly agreed to trade CSAM with another user via Skype, sharing illicit material as part of their communication. Skype was the primary platform used for trading the CSAM. Okay, so how easy would it be to accomplish everything needed if Richard Allen hypothetically was working with the Kleins, they were motivated by money, they were going to sell a product in Las Vegas, how would Richard Allen be able to accomplish that without leaving a digital footprint? So let me know in the chat. How would Richard Allen go about it? They didn't find anything on his laptops, on any of his other phones. How would somebody like Richard Allen be involved with Anthony Schatz, targeting Abby and Libby, committing the murder, potentially for a snuff film, crime scene photographs, basically checking off a list, an order list from a customer, a client? Wasn't one of his phones not found during the 2022 raid? Absolutely. The only phone ever for him to lose was the phone that he had that day. Mark says burner phone. Anybody else? Anyone else? In the back. All right. We'll give it to Mark then. You're absolutely right, Mark. So how could a child predator use a burner phone with KIK and get away with it? Okay, so acquiring a burner phone for anonymity. So you don't want to get caught. You know, maybe you're not as dumb as Norfleet, right? At his home computer searching the dark web. Accidentally uploading one of his CSAM photos on Bing. Not thinking. Maybe Richard Allen was a little bit more sophisticated than a Norfleet was. He knew better. If I'm going to get involved in this, I'm going to take certain steps so that I don't get busted. I care what people think about me. Yep, Roblox, things like that. Absolutely. Okay, so what's a burner phone? Burner phone is a prepaid, inexpensive mobile device typically purchased with cash to avoid linking it to a user's identity. And you don't even need service. You don't need to purchase anything. All you need is a phone. All you need is a smartphone and an internet connection. You can make phone calls, you can send text messages, and you can access KIK and anything else you want to online. You don't even need to purchase anything. In 2016, 2017, relevant to cases like Schaffner's, burner phones were often feature phones or low-cost smartphones using prepaid SIM cards, requiring no contact or personal information. Julie says, I believe he got rid of that phone. Even if they did the search of his home the day he gave Dolan his statement, I think that phone was already deposited. Yeah, I'm sure. Just take the SIM card out or whatever if they used a digital camera and burn it along with everything else. A predator could buy a burner phone at a retail store like Walmart or really any convenience store, right? With cash, ensuring no credit card or ID trace. They could activate a prepaid SIM with minimal registration, often bypassing real name requirements in the US during that period. KIK requires only an email address or phone number for an account creation, which can be disposable. Can be a disposable email, Gmail created on the burner phone, or the burner phone's temporary number. This allows the predator to create a KIK account unlinked to their real identity. Mark, do you believe he had his phone while he was on the trails? No, I believe his personal phone was somewhere else attempting to create an alibi. And I think he was on a burner phone and may have even had a digital camera with him. Redfoot, what up? Maybe they should have checked his brother-in-law's phone and computer. Johnny Walker, who passed away in September of 2016, Kathy's brother. Yep. Maybe that's how Richard Allen got access to all that information. He's like going through the computers and he's like, who's Anthony Schatz? What's this? It's a long shot, but yeah, you're on the right path. KIK's private chats and group features allow predators to share CSAM or groom minors discreetly. For example, Schaffner used KIK to send CSAM to an undercover FBI agent. And cases like Dakota James Gilmore involve 50-plus CSAM-focused group chats requiring illicit content for entry. So they're creating these groups online, and you can't join unless you break the law. It's like blood in, blood out, but it's pedophile in, pedophile out. Pedo in, pedo out. So you have to prove you have something to offer the group. KIK permits sending images and videos which predators exploit to trade CSAM, as seen in cases like Brandon Kyle Meredith Adcox out of Evansville, Indiana, and Wade Willett out of Maine. A burner phone storage and camera could be used to create or share such material. Predators can use KIK to pose as peers or trustworthy figures, as in Keegan Klein's catfishing of Libby German in the Delphi case. A burner phone enhances this by providing a disposable number for initial contact or verification, discarded after use. Evading detection, which is the point, right, of a burner phone. That's the ultimate reason you have it. Well, why didn't they find anything on Richard Allen's computers and his phones? By using a burner phone purchased with cash and a disposable email, the predator avoids linking their KIK accounts to the real-world identifiers, unlike traceable personal phones. Frequent disposal. Predators can discard burner phones after short use, maybe days, weeks, or even months, replacing them to avoid cell tower tracking or device seizures, as noting in your phone inquiry. In phone inquiries. This was feasible in 2016 through 2G network phase-outs began complicating older burner phone use. Wi-Fi usage. A predator could use public Wi-Fi, cafes, libraries, instead of cellular data to mask their location, further reducing traceability. KIK's functionality on Wi-Fi only devices supports this. Multiple accounts. Burner phones allow creating new KIK accounts if one is banned, as seen in Gilmore's case, where he used disposable Gmails to evade restriction. Remember, Keegan Klein mentioned something about VPNs as well. Trading CSAM. A predator could use KIK on a burner phone to join CSAM trading groups, as in the cases of Earl Frederick Owens or Robert John May III sharing illicit files anonymously. The burner's temporary nature minimizes evidence retention. But why didn't they didn't find anything on Richard Allen's computers? It's because he was using a burner phone. Possibly, right? Using KIK's random chat or group features, a predator could target minors as Stephen Rea did in Canada, leveraging a burner phone to avoid linking communications to their identity. discussing harm, as in Lish's Skype case, where he discussed raping and killing children. A predator could use KIK on a burner phone for similar discussions, exploiting group chats with like-minded offenders. The burner's disposability reduces risk of law enforcement monitoring the account. Traceability. Despite anonymity, burner phones can be traced via cell tower data or IP addresses if Wi-Fi is used carelessly. Home networks, for example, on a home network. Modern forensics, as discussed in your burner phone, as discussed with burner phones, can link devices to locations, as seen in Richard Allen's Delphi conviction. Okay, so we are running out of time. Let me pull up Keegan Klein's interview transcript where they mentioned Skype. Make sure this is the redacted one here. Okay, so on one page, the Emily Ann account is talking to somebody on the KIK account, on the KIK app, under the Emily Ann. And they're talking about, he asked if a 40-year-old met you, could he look at your, you know what? Emily Ann sends a picture. Oh, the person says, oh, what does your dad look like? Emily Ann sends a picture. Emily Ann says, well, I'm sorry. How old? Emily Ann said, 42. So when this message was sent, Richard Allen was 42. And this was sent to a 16-year-old girl. Emily Ann said, he asked if you'd ever hook up with a 42-year-old. The victim said yes. Emily Ann said, he's almost 43, though. That's the age of Richard Allen at the time. Not his father. They even asked him during the interview, like, hey, this doesn't add up. If you're telling me that your father's the only person that has this account, the age doesn't match up. He wouldn't have been 43 at the time. So they're trying to ask him, like, who is this? Who is this person? Anthony Schatz also asked, would you lose your virginity to him and show your body, baby? And then it gets down to Emily Ann asks the victim, Skype. And she gives, what's your Skype? For the victim's Skype. She gives it to him. Emily Ann said, he asked if you want to watch him jerk off. Emily Ann said, he asked if you'd get naked for him. Emily Ann said, hurry. He's not waiting all day. He said, hurry before he comes. The victim says, ready. And then on the phone, there's a Skype conversation that took place. Keegan Klein's asking, through what Skype account? Keegan Klein says, I never Skyped anyone. So what'd you use? He says, I mean, Skype in high school and stuff, but never, basically, he's saying I never did it for these purposes. So somebody who is around 43 years old, which would have been Richard Allen, right, in 2016, when those messages were sent, I think is evidence that Richard Allen and Keegan Klein were maybe not even using separate devices. Maybe Richard Allen was using Keegan Klein's devices. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, so you have him using Skype. He talks to them on Instagram, Facebook, and then sends them over to the KIK app. Once they're on the KIK app, this person would send them over to Skype so he can actually see them in real time. All right, so we'll just spend the next 8 minutes discussing the information that I went over today, and then we'll get out of here. Bobo the Gray, what's up? My point is, I'd be curious to know how many of those phones were in CVS shrink reports. Yeah, I don't know if CVS sells them, and I don't know if he would purchase them from CVS. But we know that these criminals, they make clever choices and then they make mistakes during those, trying to implement their plan. Like Rex Heuermann, he went and purchased his burner phones, and they caught him on a video purchasing the phones. They were able to trace it back. So he didn't completely cover his tracks, even though he wore a disguise while making the purchase. You wouldn't even have to purchase a phone. Really, all you need is a smartphone. It could even be something that you found in a lost and found or something. You could steal a phone. You steal the phone, factory reset it, install KIK, and then log into a public Wi-Fi. Nobody will ever be able to trace you. Yeah, I just don't see him doing that, Redfoot. I don't see him stealing something from his own store like that. There's just so many other options. But then again, they make those mistakes. So yeah, you could be right. Yeah, we know what shrink is, Bobo. Whether he's buying or stealing, I don't think he's going to be doing it at the store that he's working at. But yeah, it's possible. Hey, super chat from Julia Burns. Thanks, Julia. Shout out to everybody who caught the live stream and participated in the chat. Thank you, guys. And remember, if you can't hit the Cash App, hit the like button. In Richard Allen's interview, he said something about an Indianapolis number he was using at the time. Not sure. And the email address, the Google email address that he provided wasn't created until 2018. He mentioned having a Yahoo email address. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that was ever provided, but the Yahoo email address would have been the email address he was using during the murders. Frank says, remember, Dollar General was right behind CVS. Also, the Save-A-Lot. So I don't know if they provided burner phones or not. But like I said, you don't need to purchase a burner phone. All you need is a smartphone. That's it. Doesn't matter where you get it from. Yep, that's exactly right, Redfoot. That's how they caught Rex Heuermann, or were able to get evidence against him. They got some information off of one of his burner phones, and then after his arrest, they were able to connect him to the purchase and got him on camera. So purchasing the burner phone like that, although it might be good for non-criminal activity, like maybe you're just trying to hide from the public for whatever reason, maybe you're a very public figure and you're kind of laying low, get a burner phone. Nobody can bother you, nobody knows the number, and then you give that number to a handful of people. But for a criminal, it's just much easier just grabbing an old phone or stealing a phone or obtaining an old phone and then connecting to a public Wi-Fi. When it comes to Richard Allen, he worked right next door to McDonald's. So he could have sat in his parking lot, connected to the Wi-Fi at McDonald's on a burner phone, and communicating with Keegan Klein on the KIK app, trading CSAM. And if he gets rid of that phone, you'll never, ever have connection to anything that he was doing on that phone. Unless he comes forward and says, hey, this is my name. This is the app that I was using. This was the information that I registered under. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, Julia. I think that's how they find each other, right? They're catfishing each other and they're using the same language and tactics. And they're like, hey, wait a minute. And then they call each other out. And then they start trading CSAM. I think that's how they meet each other online. Like, let's say somebody sees this profile of Emily Ann 45. It's this 13-year-old girl acting like some sweet, innocent kid trying to make friends. Well, that's a target for an online predator. Online predator starts targeting Emily Ann 45 and quickly realizes that, hey, you're just like me. You're an online predator. Did we just become best friends? Do you want to go on KIK and trade CSAM? So it's like the devil's version of Step Brothers. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's live stream. If you need to get a hold of me for whatever reason, shoot me an email at sleuthintuition.com. Do not forget, tonight we go live on a very disturbing case out of Phoenix, Arizona. Let me put this up on the screen. This is the thumbnail that was created for it. Do not miss this, guys. It's going to be a long, deep dive into the Canal murders. This case pretty much terrified the entire state of Arizona at one point. So this will be tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. The Zombie Hunter, Brian Patrick Miller. So the murders went unsolved for over 2 decades, earning the moniker Canal Killings despite DNA evidence. The killer's profile was not in CODIS, and leads dried up. Suspects like European surgeon and a special forces operative were investigated but cleared. A group of forensic experts profiled the killer as a likely local with precursor crimes and possible prior police contact. So just like Gary Ridgway, The zombie killer here, he was charged with stabbing a woman. So he spent time in juvenile hall. So Brian Patrick Miller, he stabbed a woman. I believe it was in a mall, Metro Mall in Phoenix. In early 2010s, Phoenix Police Department cold case unit led by Detective Sergeant Troy Hillman and Detective Clark Schwarzkopf revisited the case. Hillman described the case files as massive and spent years combing through them. In 2014, Phoenix Police collaborated with Identifinders International, led by Colleen Fitzpatrick. Using genetic genealogy, they analyzed crime scene DNA against public genealogy databases, identifying the surname Miller. This narrowed down the suspect pool to 6 individuals with the last name Miller. Brian Patrick Miller, already flagged due to his 1990 stabbing case, emerged as a prime suspect. So he was convicted for the murders of 2 girls that made up the Canal murders, but he's the suspect in a handful of others. All right, guys. So hopefully I'll see you all there a little bit later today. Thanks for hanging out. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace out.